information industry, they spend very little dollars on R&D.
Yep.
Their dollars are advertising dollars to get people in and fulfillment costs to fulfill those clients what they're in. But they spend very little time kind of scrutinizing the customer's experience and making sure they're getting data back. But if you build it into your model from the beginning, methodically, you're going to be in a better position. Because here's the problem that I get mostly. It's, I got all these customers and I want to use their testimonials. Why can't I use them? Well, because you didn't build it in your model. Now you're trying to go back and capture data that you never got in the first place, which is very difficult, right? Because you're right. When you go back to that client now and you say sign a release or something like this, they're like, screw you. I'm not doing this now. I'm not showing you my bank statements. I'm not doing any of this. But if they know that's the expectation in the beginning, they sign up and they sign a waiver and affidavit when day one. So they've already given you a release to use the information you're going to accumulate during the process.
Yeah.
You've already got it in your system. It's just your system's wrong. And it's easier to set up system and processes at the beginning than to go back.
All right, so back. Here we are. Today we're going to talk about testimonials with the one and only, the guru of compliance law, Greg Christiansen. What's up, Greg?
You know, people are going to laugh when you hear that, like the guru, you know.
The
like,
guru.
I'm going
the
to come
guru
on.
Of the guru of the law. The
I'm
guru
going to come
of the
on
law.
with, you know, a nice hat and everything next time,
Well,
gold chains.
Here's a fun fact about Greg that a lot of you probably don't know. He's a judge. He plays both sides, guys, so be careful. I've always said I think he trades, and he's a trader. He goes to the other side sometimes. He's a judge in Utah. He sits in a little robe and does the whole judge thing, has a gavel and everything. I was like, that's cool. One day we're going to talk about that.
Yesterday morning, I flew out being with you, and I flew home. First thing yesterday morning, I was on the bench.
Man, and that's the other thing about Greg. I don't know. He gets an endless source of energy. So he was just here, and he owned me because he filmed an entire academy, our Compliance Academy course, the entire thing, which was hours of filming in one day. And I'm like, and as he did that, I'm like, wow, I think it's been probably 10 years since I was able to film an entire course in one day. So I was like, all right, I can't let him outdo me, so now I got to do the same. So I'm getting ready. Thank God for me. Purvak, our AV director, is leaving for India for 3 weeks. So I was like, I can't do it right now. I have to wait till he's back. But just to give everyone an update, the book is coming along great. By the time you watch this episode, we're getting really close to the launch. It's not going to be on Feb 13th. We're pushing it back. It's going to be awesome. We've got Academy we're getting ready to launch. It's going to be epic. And then I've committed to filming a course called Compliant Model Academy. Now that's a whole different thing, where I'm going to finally take you little naysayers that are like, we can't say anything, compliance is stupid, it doesn't work, it fails. God, you whiners on Facebook, just shut up. It works. And so, but I hear you. All right, I'm just joking, by the way. I'm being funny. I hear you. We've been maybe talking a little bit about the things you can't say. We're gonna start talking about things that you can say, which leads us to today's episode. So today we're going to talk about testimonials. And we're going to first start by talking about what you cannot do with testimonials, but then we're going to pivot to talk about what you can do. And Greg, what I want to do is use an example. I'm not going to give the name, but there's a particular person that asked some good questions. So we're going to use that person's example. And really, I'm going to push back and forth and try to see what I can get out of you as far as what we can use. But can you just...
free legal advice for some person that's out there? You're like, hey, I'm
in totally is. It totally is. That person's gaming it right now. So before we do that, can you just give a few minutes? You have a really cool thing you do where you're like, hey, there's 4 rules to using a testimonial in a presentation. So can you go over those real quick?
Yeah. So... The FTC governs testimonial and endorsements with guidelines they implemented in 2009. They updated those in 2014. Back in the day, the reason they implemented these rules in the first place was because people would use celebrity endorsements or whatever like that, and it'd make it look like, oh, that person uses the product, when they're like, they haven't eaten that thing or they haven't used that thing or whatever else. So they put these into place to make sure that the right impression was being made as it relates to testimonials. And so when it comes down to claims about your student, depending upon what they're trying to say. There are 4 elements that I always say that you have to make sure you're meeting with a testimonial. Number one, you need to make sure you have a release/affidavit from the client itself. I had a client that used a testimonial in one of their webinars, and after they were very successful in their launch, they said, hey, we did this, generated this amount of money on this. And the person who they grabbed the testimonial for, who they didn't get permission from, sent them a demand and said, you need to pay me because I calculated how much time they were exposed on the webinar and said, this is the amount of money you made based upon my image and likeness. So big issue, right? You don't want to do that. So you want to make sure you have their authorization. It's nice to have that and as an affidavit saying, upon penalty and perjury, the information they're giving to you is true and accurate. So at least you have some context in that. That's one. Number 2 is substantiation. You need to make sure you have independent evidence from the claim itself that shows that what the person is saying in their testimonial is true. So if you have a client that you've seen on Facebook or Trustpilot or whatever DMs you and says, hey, I made $10,000 flipping a house, you would have to go through and say, okay, that's their statement, but independent from that statement, can I prove it? So independent provement or evidence of that statement would be something like, in this case, settlement statements when they bought the house, settlement statements when they closed on the house, improvement costs through credit card statements and bank account records to show how much they paid to renovate the house. And then you come up with a net figure that you could say independent of their statement was $10,000. That's number 2. It's a threshold thing. The number 1 claim the FTC brings in these lawsuits, when they're the legal premise for lawsuits by the Federal Trade Commission for information type organizations and companies, is false or unsubstantiated earnings claims. It's not that they know they're false. It's just when they ask the company, they can't prove that they're false. They're true. And so the burden is on you to have that in advance. And that's what the guidelines say. So you want to make sure you've got that substantiation before you even put it in any of your marketing materials. So if you don't have substantiation for a testimonial, can't use it. Number 3 is you can't use every claim that's out there. You only should use claims that are typical. That's why in a lot of cases, I don't recommend clients use earnings claims as part of a testimonial. It's very difficult to show that that's the typical result in which a client should expect if they joined the program. So, but if you're going to do it, you've got to make sure it's a typical result, because you could have a release, it could be true and you could substantiate it, but it doesn't create an impression that's typical of everything else. Here's a good example. You have a client that's out there and they go out and they invest $1 million. And when they invest that $1 million, they make $2 million because things just hit right. It was like they won the lottery. They do it in 30 days. Well, nobody in your program has ever done that before, but they did it. They lucked out, they picked the right investment, they followed the advice, and it just hit. And then you're like, wow, that's wonderful. Let's show you this. But the closest person who's ever made money using your program ever before was $10,000. So this is a huge outlier, right? It doesn't represent what the typical student that's coming through your program or client that's using your service is actually doing. So you can't use non-typical examples as your success stories or testimonials, because if you do that, then it's a misrepresentation. You're creating an impression that, hey, if you join our program, you're going to be like this person when they're not. Now, I've got a great client that goes and does this great. They have a Shopify, Amazon type offer, and then they show, hey, using this one strategy, this person made $50, and then they showed the illustration, everything about how they generated their first $50 on a Shopify or Amazon account. And then they disclose it. So because they can say that's kind of a typical transaction for somebody that's engaged, that does minimal work with what they do. So they know, because of documentation and surveys and everything else in the back, that that's a typical type of experience. And then they provide a proper disclosure. And the rule says this. The disclosure,
And that's rule number 4, right? That's the
number
4th rule. Yeah.
Number four is that they have to have a disclosure that is proximate and predominant to the claim, meaning you need to be able to hear it if it's an audio representation, see it if it's visual, and it has to be, you have to be able to see it or hear it at the time the claim is being made. Can't just bury it at the bottom or in your terms and conditions, the bottom of a landing page or the bottom of an email. You need to have it. And if it's a webinar or VSL and you're talking about charts or hypotheticals then you want to make sure you reinforce it. And you have it written and say, hey, just remember, I'm showing you this example of a strategy. This is not a guarantee of results or that you're going to do what this is representing. This is just an illustration so I can show you how the strategy works. So you're qualifying things at the same time, because there are several cases like the Automators LLC case from August of 2023 that they used disclosures on hypotheticals were printed, but they were ineffective disclosures because the claims were you're going to make 60K in 5 months, right? Couldn't disclose it. And that's a really good point. Can't use a blatant earnings claim and then try to slap up a disclosure and be like, oh, I put a disclosure. Because the overall impression is what the FTC is going to look at. If people seeing the testimonial walk away thinking, I'm going to be that person, and it's pretty strong that that's the way it is, they're going to make money. Maybe not exactly the same amount of money as that person, but they're going to absolutely make money, then that's the wrong net impression. So in order to qualify for a good testimonial, you have to meet all 4 of those requirements.
Okay. So
I step off soapbox now and I turn it to the market.
All right, let's talk. First question that comes up, and guys, we're gonna dig deeper and deeper into this. I'm gonna ask some follow-up questions. We're gonna try to figure out how to use testimonials. I want to jump ahead of everything and just tell everybody that for me personally, I have just removed testimonials that talk about specific results. Period. Earnings, sales, anything. And what I'm doing is I'm doing character and experience-based testimonials. This I got straight from Greg. Greg gave an amazing. He said something, I don't even know if you say this regularly, I happen to say it to just me or what, but it finally brought to my understanding how to use this. And what Greg basically said is, you can only make claims about or have testimonials make claims about the things that you can control. And the outcome and results of somebody else is not something you can control. The experience that you have in my training, I can control. And so when there's a testimonial about my character, which I can control, or their experience in my training, which I can control, or the quality of the training, which I can control, then that is not something where you have to go and, do all of this crazy. There's no earnings. There's no claims in it. They're just talking about their experience. And I found that the main purpose of a testimonial for me as a marketer really is it's social proof in the end, right? It's showing a real human who went through something and had a positive experience. And I have found that social proof is completely replicatable by just doing testimonials that are about myself or my program or my team or my company. Something else that you said, Greg, we've got to cover, and then I'm going to get into the specifics. Marketers do this all the time, and I have in the past at some point done this. That's all I'm going to share. We like to cross-pollinate testimonials from product to product, which means we got a testimonial for this product, and we use it over here to sell this product because, but it's I'm the same person training, and they really were giving me a testimonial, and I'm going to carry it over. And Greg, that's just, has the FTC specifically made a statement about that? Have you seen something specific where they said, don't do that?
Well, if you're using hey, look at Bill did this and they used the service and they were so happy with it, but Bill bought, a bookkeeping service from you 10 years ago. And now you're offering an Amazon selling service, completely different. So how could they even say, have a testimonial about the product or service you're now offering when they never bought that product and service from you?
Oh.
So it's a misrepresentation. It's a violation of Section 5.
But what about when it's a little closer? So your example is an extreme difference. I get it, but okay, me. Well, I'm gonna hypothetical example. They buy a course from me about. No, here. They bought a coaching program from me, let's say, that they paid a few $1,000s for that was on email marketing. 3, 4, 5 years ago, the concepts I taught in the coaching program are the same that I am now teaching in my $1,000 non-coaching self-administered training program. It's a different name. The thesis and the training is the same. This person spoke about how effective and powerful that training was, and they had these results from that training. Can I use it over here, even though the content is the same, but the product is technically different?
Yeah, you shouldn't. So say
Shouldn't.
you're running two offers at the same time, right? And one of the offers is high ticket sales, the other offer is Amazon management services. You got somebody who loved your management services for Amazon, you're like, hey, I'm going to use that testimonial for my high ticket sales offer. It
Yeah.
doesn't work because it's not apples to apples.
Yeah, I know that. I guess where I'm pushing is I'm getting apples to apples a little bit. Where I'm saying the actual coaching and training, the curriculum is the same. So it's both. This was how to do email marketing. This is how to do email marketing. They're different programs though. This was a coaching program that had much more hands-on support. This one is a self-administered program. It's still not
It's
cross-pollinating
not apple. Yeah, but it's not apples to apples because they're different
because of
ones.
yeah,
One
because of
is
the way it was
done
trained.
for you, not I mean not 100% right, and the other one
Done with
is
you. Yeah.
done with when yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
done with you, instead of
Yeah.
here you just
Okay.
go figure it out yourself.
Yeah, I just wanted everyone to hear that because that was something that came up, and I know it's done a lot.
Because think about it, the people you're helping. So here, it's the difference between read this book and go figure it out. Well done, versus read this book and we're going to have weekly meetings to discuss it and show you how to.
Yeah. Yeah.
The experience is going to be different. It's so
Yeah.
much more hands-on that
Yeah.
your satisfaction rates, of course, are going to be way higher for that.
Yeah.
And
Yep. Yep.
somebody
Yep.
just gets a book, right?
Yeah. All right. So let's go back to your list of four, and then let's peel them apart a little bit. So number one, you got to have that affidavit. The minute you said affidavit, I'm like, shit. I think the customer would be scared, right? It just sounds but truth be told, someone brought this up on Facebook, and he said, well, gosh, getting them to sign off on all of this, like it would make it harder. And my answer just was, yeah, it does. I mean, probably another reason not to do such specific, I made a gajillion babillion dollars, because then you do need to do that. On top of that, yeah, you got to substantiate. So number two is substantiated. So you got to go look under the hood and you got to be able to confirm. So here is what I found fascinating. I did not know that. Before I began working with you, I thought, hey, I'm grabbing what they're saying. I don't have to substantiate what they said. I have to substantiate what I say. But you are using their claim, and you are using it, so it's becoming your claim. And so if it's your claim, it's got to be substantiated. So you've got to go look under the hood and make sure it's substantiated. Number three, and this is where I'm still lost. And so I want to talk to you about typical results. I don't understand this. So let me give you a scenario, and I'm pulling straight words out of my friend's mouth who wanted free legal advice. So basically he said, let's say I have 100 customers. Now we understand and we know one thing. No matter how great a coaching program or how great an educational program or how great a book is. Greg, you and I are going to sell lots of thousands of copies of this book. Wink, wink to everybody watching. But we know, you and I both know, 90%, 80, 90% of the people that buy the book are never going to read it. How many books are on my shelf that I've never read? We can make this book as good as we want. We can even build a hand inside the book that reaches out and slaps the shit out of people, and they still won't read it. So he asked a good question. He's like, well, how do I handle that? How do I define what a typical result is if I do a survey and 10 people reply out of the 100 and all 10 have had some results? Is that typical? Is 10 enough? Can I address it? Can I say, hey guys, I did a survey of 100 customers, 10 replied. This is the typical result of those who replied. And I'm like, well, I don't know. So how do you determine as an attorney, like if I come to you and I'm like, Greg, I have typical results. How do you say something is typical?
So it's the by far hardest thing that any company has to do. So there's a lot of diligence. Let me use Beachbody as an example because I think they
Okay.
do it brilliantly. So if you guys don't know who Beachbody is, you should, but they do P90X, right? When you sign up for P90X, from the moment you register online to buy that course, they have an intake system. It's pictures of where you're at, get on a scale, you report that. So they embed at the beginning of the program throughout the entire thing. That's part of their model, right? They want you to be accountable. So there's like daily or weekly or every couple of days weigh-ins and so forth. So you can follow it. And then you can checklist, like you can check in that you're following the meal plan. So by the time they're done with 90 days, they're collecting data the entire way. So then if you go to P90X website and you're going to buy, their disclosures, they'll show people's results, which is brilliant, right? They've got the day one picture, the 90 picture. You can see the results, which is fabulous. And then underneath it says, for people who followed the program for 90 days and followed our weight loss program, we have shown through this data that the average person loses 5 pounds. It's on the website. You can see it. The typicality, they embed it in their process. So if you want to use the typical results for I don't know what products you're offering, you have to create a mechanism within your own internal process from the time the person signs up for the whatever training or source or product you're giving them through the end of that training product or source. You have to have built-in modules to be able to check in on them. And if you do it correctly, by the time they're done with their coaching or mentoring or whatever program they signed up with, you can see a systematic collection of data to say the people who have gone through, not just signed up, because P90X qualifies it, right? They don't say every person who buys the product loses 5 pounds. It's every person who goes and follows the meal plan and finishes the 90 days does this. So they're not saying, because if they were saying typical results of every person signed up, how many people signed up and then day one they stop. They're talking about a group of people who finished the course. And you could do the same thing. Of the people who signed up, went through the course, we monitored what they were doing. At the end of the course, this is the results. Now, some of you, maybe you're training on real estate investing, and through the training of the course, nobody's making offers on real estate or whatever it is. So you don't know what that is at that point in time, but then you build it in your model to have touch points after 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 120 days. You have touch points with the client where they sign up. Hey, part of this course is 30 days, 90 days of intense training, and then a year of communication with us so we know where you're at to keep a pulse on it. It's going to be a better customer experience because they're going to feel that you're engaged for a longer period of time. And it's going to be a better company experience because your clients are going to be giving you feedback on their results and quality and everything else through the process so you can figure out what the typical result is. And if the end of the day, it's, of the people who've got our real estate training who did 40 offers in the first 6 months, the average deal was 2 to 3 times, 2 to 3 deals in that period of time, or whatever it is. What it is. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I love it because I love what you said there, and I hadn't thought of it this way, because I remember, I swear it's even in my settlement. Even in my settlement, I could swear the FTC says it's not enough to just say of the people who finished. They're saying even then you better be able to substantiate it, right? And what you're saying is it's substantiating. It's creating proof along the way the whole time. And then it's like P90X is not going to get on an infomercial and say, the average result of the customers who invested in our program is a weight loss of 7 pounds. No, they're going to say the average result of the customers who finish our program, follow the diet plan and the exercise plan the way we give it, is an average loss of 6 pounds or whatever, right? So now all of a sudden, even the claim is specific. They've got the substantiation. And so this gives hope to those who are listening. Guys, you can generate data for a typical result if your program is very good. But having said that, it takes work. And you got to put the work in. If you want the benefit. It's just work.
PG or, Procter and Gamble or, Disney or whatever, big companies, they spend their research and development process, R&D departments, and doing surveys and figuring out what the customer experience is, millions of dollars, right?
Yep.
The problem that I'll be hypercritical of this industry, the information industry, they spend very little dollars on R&D.
Yep.
Their dollars are advertising dollars to get people in and fulfillment costs to fulfill those clients what they're in. But they spend very little time kind of scrutinizing the customer's experience and making sure they're getting data back. But if you build it into your model from the beginning, methodically, you're going to be in a better position. Because here's the problem that I get mostly. It's, I got all these customers and I want to use their testimonials. Why can't I use them? Well, because you didn't build it in your model. Now you're trying to go back and capture data that you never got in the first place, which is very difficult. Right? Because you're right. When you go back to that client now and you say sign a release or something like this, they're like, screw you. I'm not doing this now. I'm not showing you my bank statements. I'm not doing any of this. But if they know that's the expectation in the beginning, they sign up and they sign a waiver and affidavit when day one. So
Yeah.
they've already given you a release to use the information you're going to accumulate during the process.
Yeah.
You already got it in your system. It's just your
Yeah.
system wrong. And it's easier to set up system and processes at the beginning than go back.
1,000%, man. This is an education worth thousands to those that are listening right now, and it's not hard to do. And the funny thing is, as a marketer, if I put my marketer hat on, I'm going to use this entire thing as an advantage. In my presentation and pitch, I'm going to say, we track you, we help you, we follow up, we've built actual accountability mechanisms in for you. The big trend right now, everybody, the big trend right now in members area systems, such as Experienceify and other LMSs, is to gamify the experience for your students. So I would ask different LMS platforms, and I plan to take this to go high level and say, guys, can you make this innately as a part of a course delivery so that those who are delivering courses can actually just build this in easily into their systems and track all their customers. The other thing that, Greg, you had once told me was these surveys and knowing what your customers are doing is great to have, because you can improve your program and make it better. So God forbid the FTC or any regulatory body comes knocking on your door, you can say, look, man, for the last years, every 2-3 months, we do these surveys, we do this review, we do this analysis, and we make it better. Here's what we did. We did this, we saw this, we learned this, and then we implemented this. I think what it comes down to, though, everyone who's watching this, is you got to run a real business. So one of the trainings I plan on doing is what I call the compliant model. And the compliant model, the thing I'm trying to teach everybody, because the number one question I'm getting right now, Greg, is this: how can I say this compliantly? And I'm like, you're asking the wrong question. You can't say that compliantly because the thing you're trying to say is not compliant. It's not a matter of words. It's not that if you use the right words, the FTC came flat out and said, look, we're done. We don't care about words. We care about net impression. So if you're you could say whatever you want. You could have Mother Teresa say the words for you, but if the net impression is bad, it is what it is. So what I'm trying to go out there now and say is, okay, the compliant model, you have to change how you market. You have to change how you do your funnels. You have to change the whole theory of your business. And I'm sorry to say this, but you actually got to start giving a shit about your customers. You actually have to start caring about results. You have to start caring about the experience, and that's how you'll stay out of it. All right, so I went on a bit of a rant there. Going back to this particular person's example, here is the exact question they asked me. And so they have 10 specific stories. They're not outlandish. They're not crazy. This person's in the crypto space, and that's probably the most detail I want to get to. But Greg, you know who I'm talking about, so you can probably guide the advice a little bit more. And they have 10 specific stories. They said they have bank statements, they have proof, they have all the shots, they have the rights to use it, no issues. They really want to use it, and they're stuck on the typicality question.
Number 3. It's always the hardest.
Yeah. So the answer to them is can't.
They can't because they haven't built in systems to figure out what the typical person that goes through their training does. They meet 1 and 2, but they don't meet 3. And then they can't meet 4 because 4 is
irrelevant. It won't matter.
Yeah. It doesn't matter.
So let me ask you this. Do you remember, you might remember this, way early into my case, when you and I started working together, I saw an email come from Raging Bull. And I forwarded it to you because I would imagine Raging Bull has to be under like super like surveillance and compliance.
They settled, they had the lawsuit and they settled within right where you did.
So I saw an email and I forwarded it. It was a marketing email from them. And in that they showed 2 bars and they showed a percentage return average increase or whatever. So I thought it was income claim. And I was like, how are they saying this? And you responded to me and you said, well, I don't see a $sign. Do you see a $sign? And I was like, huh. And now that I've worked with you a lot more, you've even told me, like, hey, if you want to use a testimonial, maybe just find out, like, the number of units of sales that the customer got, or, like, in what time frame they got their first few sales. And believable, small number, nothing outlandish, but not $sign included. So I'm wondering with this person, they could easily turn the $700 their customer made in 3 weeks into a 3, 4, 5% return. Is it still a problem because it's not matching the typicality?
Yeah, because you'd have to say that typical student had a 3 or 5% return on investment. But um, you know, they engaged in a successful transaction.
Okay.
They invest in, it's hard because crypto, it's one of those weird things because crypto isn't considered as an investment, but it is an investment. I mean, the SEC governs it, but doesn't govern. I mean, they're trying to figure it out. I mean, they
Yeah.
just did their thing a couple weeks ago with ETFs, right? Or last week or whatever, on ETFs and they're kind of figuring it all out. I mean, there's
Okay.
different,
So
different.
so basically for now, to this person, take your testimonial, make it generic. Sorry, you cannot show the specifics up and until. So, okay, last question, and this is what he asked me. These are not my questions, so don't get frustrated with me. He said, what if I'm super hyper clear? What if I'm so clear in the VSL where I say, look, this is not a typical result. I don't know what the typical result is, but these are 10 people that, really well followed my system. They replied and responded to my request for more information. Like if he just went out of his way to provide the context to say, I don't know the typical result because I haven't tracked the typical result, but here's a few examples. And they're not like crazy examples. They're not outlandish. Would you still, as the attorney, say, now here's another thing you need to know. This is a lead generation campaign to get them on a phone call. And we all know that telesales is even more heavily regulated. So my assumption is I'm playing attorney here, but I think you would still say, too bad, so sad, can't. That's not going to suffice.
Again, this is a problem I get all the time, right? And I just had a client I was on the phone with last night, and they were like, hey, I've got a webinar I'm going to be filming on Tuesday. I would love for you to go through and so I can film on Tuesday. And I was like, they've already built the scripts, they've already done everything else. To try to go in and to redirect things at this late date, or maybe they had filmed the webinar and then they're like, hey, we're live, can you fix this tomorrow? I can't do that. I'm not a miracle maker. And it's the same thing with testimonials. Like, hey, I've got these 10 testimonials, but I can't figure out typicality because they didn't build it in their system to start with. And so to go back and fit the toothpaste back in the tube,
Yeah.
that's hard.
Well,
You know?
well, we have a solution coming for you that will
Yes,
make
we
you
do. Yes,
that
we do.
will make you into a what'd you say, a magic worker? What'd you say? A wizard?
Coworker.
Miracle worker. We'll make you
Yes.
into a miracle worker because you'll be able to take a multi-hour webinar and feed it into our new upcoming software, and like that, have a little attorney Greg go through it and say, can't say that, don't say that, don't say that, don't say that. It's kind of cool. We've been testing with it. I haven't been talking much about it to the public, but we ran another test on our tool called Complyly yesterday, and I saw the feedback that my team gave back to the developers, and it was nitpicking, man. This thing is almost there. It's going to be I think it's going to absolutely transform the businesses for those of you who want to take compliance seriously, because there's a bunch of you NIM mods that don't, and that's okay. That's your decision. All right.
They like
let me
Russian roulette. They're like, we'll just play the game. We'll just try
well,
run and
it's frustrating, man, because after having been through what I've been through, I'm writing this book, right? As we write this book, and as I write my parts, I'm like reliving the damn thing again and again. And now I'm doing podcasts. I have tons of podcasts lined up, and every single one I have to relive the story, and then only to see someone basically tell me that their strategy for compliance against regulators is to stay under the radar. I don't know what that means. And the fact that people just aren't listening, and here's what I'm finding out. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna just rant for a little bit. I think the team will be able to turn this into a nice short. Marketers, you're just lazy. And I was one self-proclaimed reformed marketer right here. Everything you need to do to be compliant is doable. Compliant marketing works. You don't work. Right? What Greg just said, you can't use testimonials unless you have these systems, and every single person probably listening goes, build the systems, so much. Build a business, man. Build a business, right? Like, do it. Do the work, because and I am. So you have an option, by the way. So some of the things I teach and train, I find these systems would be very difficult to implement. I'm not teaching, crypto trading or investing, or I'm teaching kind of more skills, right? So I have some training programs I'm launching that are going to be teaching how to build funnels, how to do marketing, how to do copywriting. I don't know how to build an accountability testing functionality there. So I just won't use specific testimonials. Like if I want to have a program on copywriting, I'm just going to focus on experience-based, content-based, generic testimonials that talk about the power of the course. And so I just like build a business. Don't be lazy. There's ways, oh, I don't want to reach out to my customers. They're not going to, well, if they're not willing to sign off on things and get, then don't use their testimonial for the love of God. If you already believe that about your customer, don't use it, right? It's not that difficult to understand, but most of the pushback we get, oh, I can't even talk about my results. You can, but you have to provide a tremendous amount of context. You have to substantiate the crap out of it, and you can't lean aggressively into it. Well, what am I going to say? Well, I'm sorry, but if you have to say all this, is what I'm learning now, and I believe, and I stand by it. If you have to say all that stuff to get a sale, imagine the type of customer you're actually bringing in. And I've lived it, and I've dealt with it. So, anyways, testimonials, guys. Those are the 4 rules. This advice you got today, I hope you appreciate how much Greg poured out, because this isn't like okay, I'll say this, Greg, correct me if I'm wrong. There isn't a document you pull up where the FTC said, here are the 4 rules for testimonials. This is Greg pining through tons of cases, experiencing it on the phone with them for countless hours, seeing and summarizing and saying, all right, 4 rules. If you do all 4 of them, you'll meet their guidelines on testimonials. And so it's a wealth of knowledge. And so I hope you take it and I hope you implement it. Greg, as always, man, thank you so much. Any closing words? I know I ranted for a little while there. I just got passionate. So
No, the only thing I'm going to close with is something you said, when I was in the office the other day, is that the relationship building model that you and I talked about is one that lasts a long time.
Yep.
Unfortunately, the churn and burn, say whatever you want to clients, get them in the door, you lose credibility and trust with the client like that. And so you can't build a foundation on that. That's a business that's not meant to succeed. And that's exactly what the FTC thinks most of you are doing, is creating a business to take money and then burn it and then move on. So it depends on what your goals are.
Yeah. And maybe they're not wrong. Maybe they're not wrong.
Maybe they're not.
I didn't just say that. I did not just say that. I cannot be on the record agreeing with the FTC.
No, I'm just saying, though.
Maybe they're right.
In my mind's eye, I don't disagree on a lot of the things that the FTC does. We fight on things. They don't see eye to eye what I say too, and I fight for defendants or for clients. But at the same time, like, be honest. Just be honest. Be honest.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, I've been saying this on some of the podcast interviews I've said, is like, I respect what they do. People think like I hate the FTC or have any, I actually don't. I don't have any animosity against them, but I also don't agree with everything that they said about me or that they do or their rules. I don't, and I don't have to.
Right.
And I don't think that offends them either. I don't think they're offended by the fact that I don't agree with everything. Having said that, just because I don't agree with it doesn't mean I don't have to follow it. The law is the law, the rules are the rules. I have to follow it. To what you said, here's something I've been really thinking about. So the compliant model, I keep focusing on the word model because it's a change in how you approach your business from A to Z. And unfortunately, we have all been taught, and we've been in this echo chamber of teaching each other the wrong way of doing things, and the model is incorrect. And so we have to decode, uncode all that training, redevelop the new model. And the model is simple. The only way look, if you want to bring someone in from the cold audience, and you want to sell them into a $1,000, $2,000, $10,000 program within a span of 48 hours of them knowing you exist, you are going to have to say things. I agree. You're probably going to have to be uncompliant. I feel that, because you're going to have to say things to get this person, or they don't know who you are, and they're going to invest thousands of dollars with you. So you hype. You end up hyping things up. You hype them up. You use high-pressure sales techniques. You use all the very things that the FTC is not a fan of, that regulatory bodies are not a fan of, and that by chance happen to also bring you the worst customers. By the way, for me, I would say I'm a great customer, but I don't make decisions for thousands of dollars in a period of 24 hours, even though I have the money. I never do it. And anyone who starts to pressure me to do it, I'm the first one out the door. But if you do it the right way and get me as a customer, I'm a great customer to have. So hype is needed, right, in those scenarios. The only way you can replace hype in marketing to be compliant is through trust. And trust is rarely gotten in a period of 24 hours. Trust is something that takes a while. So that's why the model has to change. And that's been kind of my rant. And I'll just say this. Think to yourself right now, and these are going to be my closing words, and I want everyone to walk away from this episode thinking about this. Think to yourself, who's been selling information that you know for 20 years, 15 years? Who's made a real business out of it? I'm talking about people that have, so Tony Robbins, right? Who's the guy? There's Robert Kiyosaki. Who's the opposite of Robert Kiyosaki? Why am I forgetting his name? That Robert Kiyosaki hates. He teaches you how to like never go into debt.
No.
Come on, I'm not. Dave
Ramsey.
Dave Ramsey has built $1 billion company, right? It was selling information. Go ahead, do this challenge in your own head. Figure out the people that have built conglomerate big companies, been around for 2-3 decades. Go check their marketing. And tell me which one of them uses the kinds of claims and things that is being used by most marketers. It innately, by being compliant, here's a crazy thing. You actually build a business that has long-term lifetime value. So, and all of those people have trust. Their people don't need them to hype. They have trust. So, separate episode coming from me. I'm going to do a solo episode about this. Greg, thank you, man. As always, have a great day, great weekend, and stay warm, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Hey, thanks again, Lon.
All right, guys. Remember, when life pushes you, stand straight, smile, push the heck back. See you guys on the next one. Grab the book, don'tsaythat.com. Academy coming out. We even have a free assessment service coming out in case you're interested in our marketing audits. Lots of cool stuff coming out. Talk to you guys later. Bye.